Well, okay, there we go. Hi. I think I need to change the, let's not spotlight it. So welcome to Coffee Hour. I hope you have some coffee. I still do. Yay. And I want to introduce, Susan Darcy, are you still here? Susan, do you want to say a word about how we got to know Julie and maybe introduce her so that?
Oh, sure. I would absolutely love to. Okay, great. Can you guys see me? All right. Yeah, hello. I'm seeing some familiar faces pop up. I see Meg and Paula. Welcome. So glad you're here. So I met Julie through the Atelier course that is held over at the Griffin Museum of Photography. If you haven't been there, you should absolutely go. It's a lovely museum in Winchester. Paula is the executive director there, and Meg is the teacher of that Atelier class in which I met Julie, who was our assistant teacher at the time. So I became friendly with Julie during that class, and we connected on a bunch of different levels. And one of the things that we had in common was our interest in Lakota culture. Some of you may know that our church and several people in the church have been going to the Pine Ridge Reservation for the last 8 years or so, and Julie found out about my connection to the reservation, as well as to Lakota Youth Day, which is initially a program of sanctuary. So we started talking about that, and Julie was really interested and ended up, through our friendship, deciding to host one of the children that were coming from the Lakota reservation. So we connected on that level, which was really wonderful. And I brought her over to Sanctuary to show her the sort of the photo documentary exhibit that I had done with those kids one year. So Julie wanted to come see it. She came over and looked at it. I told her about what we do at Sanctuary, and that we'd like to have artists show once a month. That we feature different artists to talk about their work and just to inspire us with the spirit of art. And Julie said, well, I might have something that you would like to show here. And I thought, wonderful. So she shared her Threshing Place work, and it was so beautiful. And I said, sure, let me bring it to to the rest of the folks on the art committee and see what they think. And of course, they all loved it. And that's how we met Julie, and that's how she got introduced to us. So she's a wonderful artist. She's a teacher of photography. She has lived in the US, she's lived in the UK, and she's had quite an experience developing this particular series of work for us. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that work, and I think you will really enjoy it too. So thank you, Julie. We're so pleased to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm delighted.
Amen. Amen. And yeah, and I just want to add one label, which is, theologian. I feel like, Julie, your work is about your own journey of discovering yourself as a theologian. And so that excites me. I'm sure it excites several other people in the room. So without further ado, I think I'm just going to turn it over to you. I'm going to spotlight your video so that or did you already do that, Tom? So that we are listening to you. And yeah, if you guys once you have questions, let me just make sure one other thing, which is that if you want to ask a question once we get to that period of time, or Julie, I don't know how you want to do it, if you want to take questions in the middle or you want to do the presentation and then take questions, but please use your raise hand feature. I'm going to mute everybody else, but if you use the raise hand feature in the participants box, then we can help manage the flow of conversation on the virtual setting. So there you go, Julie. Go for it.
Thank you. Is it possible for me to share my screen? Is that set up to be able to do that?
you know what, let me, I think I can change that so that you can.
Okay, great.
Or I can bring the art up for you if you
I
want.
have a slideshow,
Got
so
it.
yeah.
There you go.
That'd be great.
You're good to share.
Wonderful. Let me just start that.
Great.
There we go. So thank you so very much for the service and for inviting my work to be on the wall. And so, thank you, Sue and Reverend Wendy, for that. Also, I do want to thank Paula, Meg, Krista at the Griffin. The art that is on the wall was framed by the generosity of the Griffin's stock of frames. So I'm so thankful for that. And I'm so glad you all can be here. Thanks for all my friends who've joined as well, and family. So yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you and for the really profound experience of being part of ARTChurch. I just love that concept, and I'm so grateful for the idea of honoring the creative process and for giving back to artists. So thank you. I know that Astrid's here in the audience, and she's also been in the walls of the sanctuary, and she talked to me about how profound ARTChurch was for her. So I'm glad she's able to be here today. This is a very personal body of work. And as I said in the little breakout room, it was 10 years since I probably shot the work until I was ready to bring it to the world, and a lot longer in the making of the internal conversations to make the work. The Threshing Place is a body of work made using materials that my mother taught Bible stories with during my youth. I asked her one day if she had that archive, and she said she was about to donate them to the church, but that I could have them. And I began working with those materials soon thereafter. And I had a residency at the Unitarian Church in London, and that's where I kind of first cracked open the box and started diving in. The series, The Threshing Place, comes from several references in the Bible, but as we mentioned during the service, I started with the story of Ruth, and the threshing place is very important in that story, and the idea of separating the wheat from the chaff, to examine the stories that I was taught and to find out how they hold meaning for me now was a very important part of this process. This body of work was made in 2 locations. The first is at the Roslyn Hill Chapel in London, a Unitarian chapel that was my community for 5 years. And my husband and I were married there, and the chapel served as a place of healing and reconnection for me. Jim Robinson is here in the audience today. He was the minister at the time at the church, and he's here in the Boston area now, so we've been able to continue our strong relationship, and we're family. He invited me to be an artist in residence at 2 different times, and so I made the work with a stained glass window over 2 different periods. And then the final parts of the work was made in the basement of the church where I grew up. I went to school there as well as worshiped there, so spent a lot of time in that space. The first image that I made is called The Lair. And it starting with a lion figure felt symbolic to me. First of all, it felt a little bit safe. It wasn't human. It was something I could kind of approach. But it also represents so much in Christian mythology. And I started looking around the chapel, and I found a place where I felt the lion could dialogue with the elements there, and began this process of photographing the images. I taped them to the windows, and I photographed them in place. So these aren't Photoshopped. These are taped to the windows with great stretching and standing on tippy toes and all of that, and then waiting for the light to be right and to photograph. I chose to title this one The Lair because it makes me think of the lion's den and the many meaningful things that happen in the lion's den in the Bible. The lair is defined as a wild animal's resting place, especially one that's well hidden, and also as a secret or private place in which a person seeks concealment or seclusion. Making this body of work felt like going into the lair, the place where wild things rest, but if they're disturbed, it can become a very dangerous place. The lair also symbolized the place and process where I could struggle and wrestle in seclusion. This image is titled The River of Life. To me, it's a very feminine image, and of course, the baby represents innocence. This image represents the beginning of life, of the journey. As it was mentioned, I was raised as a fundamentalist evangelical Christian. For me, the home and the church was a very safe and secure place. And this image of the sleeping girl kind of reflects that feeling of security. I actually started with the story of Ruth, and I'm pretty sure this is the figure of Ruth. But for me, this became a representative of me and resting. And I also feel like in some ways there's a stillness and a submission in this image as well. So while it's peaceful, it also holds a tension of stillness. This image is children of God. It feels to me like the children are waiting. For what? To be led, to be taught, to be shown the way. My original title for this was The Lost Children, but it just felt too forlorn. These children represent me and my peers. I reorganized the work for the slideshow from the way it's on the wall because it flows more with the religious journey that I've been on. So it's been put together for this moment in this way. So it's a little different than visually on the wall. The good disciple. I was taught that there were 12 disciples of Christ. They were all male. In this image, I wanted to emphasize a female presence and show that devoutness is not gendered. I know some religious traditions allow for the idea of a female disciple, but I did not hear of her. I wanted her to have that formal title. The offering. This image is about service, about devotion, about serving with joy and purpose. There is a peace that comes with such service. And Jim spoke in the breakout group that this window is the angel of simplicity. And I also like knowing that. And I think there's something very simple about this act of service. It's meaningful and deep and present. I titled this one The Good Girl, but I've also been reflecting that it could be called The Peacemaker. Standing at the feet of Jesus, waiting to serve, wanting to do everything right. This girl is very contained and appears to be serene. She did not want to step on any flowers or make a mess of any kind. She strove to keep the peace at all costs. The recipients. I think faith is based on the premise of promise. We believe. We believe that we will receive something: redemption, everlasting life, peace, joy, understanding. In this image, the recipients are waiting for their blessings to be bestowed in whatever forms they will take. I was so excited when I found a visual partner in the stained glass for these two characters. Who knew that leopard skin imagery could translate across these two very different mediums? It really brought home to me how the stories get passed down through the ages, even details like leopard skin, passed across time and across craft. I call this one The Inheritance. This is likely the story of Jacob and Esau, when the blind father was tricked into giving his heritage to the wrong son. We all inherit beliefs and stories, and we have to decide what to do with our inheritance. Central to the Christian belief is the concept of Christ, the Son of God, taking the form of man on earth, dying on the cross to save us from our sins, rising from the dead, and ascending back to heaven. In this image, you can see Christ about to ascend to heaven. But in this juxtaposition, he is surrounded by female figures who are observing and perhaps ministering. I feel this image brings together the heavenly and the earthly elements of the story, and it adds a female reference to the narrative. Doubt. We've all had it. Doubt about something. Maybe we question something religious or our family histories or something cultural or political or personal relationships. Faith is a promise, and doubt is the fear that the promise won't be or won't come true. For me, doubt was not an option growing up. Questioning itself felt like a sin. When doubt began to creep in my late teens, my world was turned upside down. Sorrow. When you believe something your whole life and then doubt seeps in, there is a period of grieving. I cried every day for 5 months, from the very palpable moment at the beginning of my doubt. Eventually, I told myself I had to stop crying. I had to accept uncertainty, and I had to move on. It was very painful, and there was much loss. But in retrospect, moving on was also a brave move. I had to step onto a new path, and this one didn't have any guardrails. Inquiry. Beginning to ask the quote-unquote innocent questions. Why? When making this image, in my spirit, I went to the time when I had to begin looking at the establishment, and in this case, the church. That was my center of reference, the place that had brought me up and had explained all things, prescribed the truth, had the right answers. And I had to look it in the eyes and ask why, and are you sure? And well, who holds the power? But what about? Finally, where in all of my humanity do I fit in? The elders are the guardians of the church. They decide who is deemed faithful enough to remain in the community. They take action when there's disobedience or unacceptable behavior. They are the force to reckon with, and they deliberate who is worthy to belong. And the community trusts in their ability to hold sound judgment. So this show went up on the walls in very early March, and we were set to have some in-person gatherings. My mother had come to Boston from Pennsylvania to view the work, and she is probably one of the very few people who've seen the show intact. And it was very special to have her come and see the show before it opened up to the public. And we had to then rush her back to Pennsylvania before COVID took over everything. But it was really, really special for me to have her in the space and to have her look at the work and to hear her voice and her memories connected to these characters. She's here in the audience today, and I'm so thankful that she could see the work and that she's been my support all these years. She saw this image, and I had been struggling on what to call this. I was like, parody, and gone back and forth with all kinds of names. And she said, oh, this is all about the bitter waters. I said, oh my God, that is the name of this title. This is body of work from now on, the bitter waters. It is just so much, I think, resonating with this journey of questioning and of trying to discern where truth lies. So this is the bitter waters. I like the juxtaposition of the character drinking bitter water, and then there's this serene angel kind of watching the scene unfold with gentle observation, as if knowing that the bitter waters can be digested and can be navigated. Contemplation. When you're on a journey, it's often helpful to stop and reflect. Think about where you've come from and where you're going. A meditative pause to gather your thoughts. I titled this one The Sojourner. Journeying is finding the way forward. I find this character to be self-possessed, on his way, walking through a path filled with perhaps different beliefs, ideas, judgments, and onlookers. He's going where he needs to go, but without apology. This is the final image that I made in the chapel. I've titled it In the Garden. We have Eve and the serpent, as per the traditional story. And in the true spirit of inquiry, this image could be read in a number of ways. We've heard the story where the snake tempted Eve with the promise of knowledge. But in this image, if we look just so, Eve might be inviting the serpent to a conversation, perhaps to learn from the wisdom that she holds. When I made this image, I felt a surge of electricity, and I recognized that I was stepping on sacred ground. And I was introducing a female perspective and a revised narrative. These final 5 images were made in the church where I grew up. I was there 6 or 7 days a week. I went to school there for 8 years, and I was in church devoutly twice on Sundays, Wednesday nights, Tuesday afternoon, good news clubs with my mom teaching. You get the picture. Pioneer girls, you get the picture. This was my world. So I went back to that church, which is now an administrative building for something else, and they let me wander around for a day. And I was back in the halls where my mother taught, where these figures were used week after week. It was very important and profound in this journey. I found that I began a slightly different way of working with the material. I started to sort of tell my own story a little bit more in tableau form, because I didn't have the reference of the stained glass to kind of guide the process. This one is called The Guardian. This is shot through the windows of they're like basement window wells, and the school was in the basement, and we'd look up through these window wells out into the world. I used to play in these window wells. We'd play hide and seek in them. I can envision little kids' feet stepping into these window wells when I was a kid. So this is where we looked up every day and looked up to the light. And this is the first image that I made. It's called the Guardian. I feel the calming presence of the guardian angel looking over me all of my life, even today. The escape. Eventually, after inquiry, after contemplating, after grieving, I had to leave. I still hear the echoes of the voices telling me or warning me not to go. This image of the fallen angel grieves me. I feel the judgment that he must feel, the failure, the frustration, the anger, and the defeat. Trepidation. When you start down a new path, when you meet new people, when you form new communities, it can be scary and uncertain. But onward you must go. One thing that I've decided is definitely worth keeping is hope. What is truth? Where does love live? Will I find peace? Maybe you've wrestled with these questions. As I navigate the threshing place, as I separate the wheat from the chaff, I find I must have hope. I must have hope in the process of inquiry, in humanity, in love, and in life with purpose. I must keep faith in hope. I'm not sure where this work will go or if it's complete. The archive is deep, and there's much to still work through. But in terms of the artwork, but also in terms of the life journey, there's much to navigate. I'm sure it will unfold. And as I said in my artist statement, the questioning is the journey, and the questioning is the answer. Thanks for listening. If you have questions, I'm happy to.
Wow, wow, wow.
That's great.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
What a gift to get the specific story from you, Julie. So yeah, Sue, you're unmuted. Do you have a question already?
I don't have a question other than just, Julie, to say that hearing your story and going through the pieces is really moving. It was really, really clear, you know, how much you thought through this and how each was crafted so specifically. I absolutely loved hearing your journey. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to remind you, if you want to ask a question, if you can raise your virtual hand, because we do have a good crowd here to help me manage muting and unmuting. So I'm going to mute you back up there, Sue.
I see my mother has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Joyce.
You have to unmute, Mom. Unmute.
Bottom left-hand corner.
Mom, can you unmute? There you
Got
go.
it.
Yay.
Got it.
See my mom.
That disappeared a while ago. Now it's back again where I could do it. I don't have a question. I just want to say to the people listening and to you, this is the first time I have heard the story behind these pictures. And so this was all new to me too. And Julie, I'm just so touched by it. And I think you did a really great job with it.
Oh, thank you, Mom.
I might be a little prejudiced, but that's okay.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you. Thank you. Reverend Wendy, you're on mute.
Sorry. As I said when we were introducing, I mean, I think while I had a sense of the story, I didn't have the whole story, but I understood the journey, the faith journey that, Julie, that you've invested so much into. And I am really honored that we got a chance to share that and to hear how your you know, I use the word theologian specifically because I think we are all theologians when we stay in a constant contact with God, when we work to have a relationship with the sacred and with each other by thinking about the ways in which that works for us. So thank you so much. And oh, I see Astrid now. Hi, Astrid. How nice to see you.
Okay, now it worked.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
So glad to be back, and congratulations to Julie. I'm really so moved by the stories I had heard a little bit before in our critique group. And I was very moved back then, especially about one image, I think the last one about hope. I think I had to step out of the room because I found it was such a wonderful image and such a very nice last image for the whole series. And I have to tell you, Julie, the images, they look awesome on screen. I think that's something you really need to explore. They really, really shine when I see them on screen with a light, a lit from behind. So it's very, very nice.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Astrid. For those of you who don't know, Astrid had shared her own personal journey through photography as one of our artists. So we're delighted that you were able to be here for this. Jess, I see you. So go ahead, Jessica.
You. I've waited 8 months for this to happen. I was going to go, I was all set to go to your show. I live just a couple of, not even a block away. And
All right.
and I've seen your work for a long time now. And 8 months later, here you are, and explaining everything. And I agree on incredible to see everything online, like, your artwork without any distractions behind, just gorgeous. Can go enter in. And thank you for the work and the personal sharing of your spiritual journey. It's very profound, and I love how you played with the images. And my favorite was, and the one I want to ask you a little bit more about was escape. There was a man in there looking back at her, and we were, our discussions, we were wondering, was that her captor, or was that someone just looking or afraid that she was a Moab, and the sense of her freedom, I have to tell you, was just joyous and transcendent. Just, so good.
Yeah, I don't know the root of that exact character from the archive, but for me, it's the voice of judgment. And you shouldn't be running away. You have to stay. What are you thinking? So there's a lot around that moment in my history when there were a lot of voices telling me not to make a move, and some of them were very loud, some of them were very nefarious, some of them were very honest, and I think the most notable was that a friend of mine in college, which is where all this was taking place, decided to write he was from my hometown, even though our college was 2 hours away. He decided to write a letter to the editor of my local newspaper saying how dangerous this particular professor had been, causing me to lose my faith. So, and he was part of my growing up community. So to have the judgment of somebody who I thought was from a safe space do that was just beyond my understanding even today. And then very lovely, wonderful people who are still in my life and my mother's life, asking me, how are you in the Lord, on a regular basis.
I think that was Oscar Johnson.
It wasn't. No, Mom.
No, it wasn't. Oh.
You don't know the person. So, so there was just all kinds. The elders were, praying for me, and there was all kinds of, and my boyfriend at the time, who was from the Bible study at my college, was like, don't ask questions. Just don't even ask questions. So it was a very hard time. And so to go was a very hard thing to do. But I felt like I couldn't hear I couldn't hear my own voice because everyone else's was so loud.
Thanks for explaining that. And how did you feel with that beautiful image? How did you feel once you left?
Oh, well, I'm still answering that one.
Right, right,
Plus
right.
years later. So I think what's really important is that love is still there, you know, finding a way to hold love in my heart for that community, for people I've known all my life. For my mother continued to work in the church until 7 years ago, maybe less. So every time I'd go home, I'd visit the church, I'd see the minister, I'd see the people who work there. And so those people stayed in my life, and I care about them and they care about me. So, but we can't.
Julie, I think this work is just, it's very, very brave. You know, it's such a personal story, and it's hard to tell. And I think that, you know, with photography, with art, you know, it all is most powerful when it is so personal, and it's difficult to do something this brave, I really admire that you really threw your heart and soul into this and are willing to bare your soul.
Thank you. It's the kind of work that doesn't have a lot of homes. I feel like it feels like it's in the right place, and this is the right community to be sharing it with.
Well, and you know, I can just, I want to just sort of blow it out just a little bit to say, I mean, isn't this the beauty of art, that we can all, even though it is so brave and personal a journey that you've expressed, I think that whether it is, you know, for me, it was my politics, right? Like my father was a card-carrying capitalist. To his dying day, you know, would never vote anything other than, you know what. And that was woven into me to the point where Mr. Obama, and you guys know me, you know what, like a radical I've always been. Mr. Obama was the first non-Republican that I ever voted for president. Like that's how deeply ingrained that message was, right? And the journey from our childhood, whether it's the message of our church or the message of our family or the messages of our culture, I think about the work that we're doing to become anti-racist and how utterly caged we are by the racist policy and practice and messages of our society that we all have to escape. Like that is such a great image that we have work to do to reframe and re-understand and release ourselves from the things that bind us and hold us back. So we could spend a couple of weeks on this one. I don't know if that others have a similar, you know, for me it was voting Republican, right? And now the work that we're doing around understanding our privilege as white people and whiteness and how that's affected things. Those are places that even those of us who have grown up in a more open and tolerant faith journey are still finding those places where we have to be released from. I loved what you said about that there's only one way to think about this, and certainly that is true in our culture. Go ahead, Ben.
Yes, that escape image resonates very much with me, and I think with Becky too. I think because we grew up in a denomination that really had the truth, you know, in quotes, and a remnant people, and very that screen to look through everything through a certain screen. So we could really relate to the artist's faith journey, and the person walking and leaving out the enormous freedom, but also the loss. And in a way, it's perhaps moving out of Eden in a way too. You know, we move into the real world, and we seek faith through God, even though we've left the particular situation and kind of closed society that defines everything and has all answers and does not allow different ways of thinking. So thank you to the artist.
Thank you. Reverend Wendy, you're on mute.
I'm talking, I'm inviting, and you're not hearing me. Sorry about that. James, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Your life journey has brought you from an intimacy with Christianity, an intimacy with your community there, where you grew up. It brought you through to different countries, living in different countries. It's brought you into an intimacy with Hinduism and your family life. It's brought you in so many different places. And this is a world now that we have to learn how to be present with diversity. And so what has your journey taught you about how to stay present as you move through all these different communities of your life? Christian, Hindu, humanist, photography. Where's the center for Julie? Where's the center that moves through it?
It's a great question, Jim. One I'm always trying to find the answer to. And when I moved back from London, I've been there 16 years. And as Jim alluded to, my husband, Sanjay, who's here, is Hindu and from a very conservative Hindu background. So when we first met, we kind of joked that our mothers would get along beautifully because they're both from the same sort of very sort of conservative end of their religions. They're just different religions. And in fact, that did ring true. They get along like a house on fire, which is great. Prejudice has been something that I grew up with questioning, but also not realizing how much of it I held in my heart. And there are many things that I said as a teenager that I was mimicking people in my culture that I'm horrified that I said now. But I also remember when I was about 5, sort of the message that you're not supposed to marry interracially. And I thought, aren't we all the same? Aren't we all people? So I remember kind of questioning even at that early age, that kind of thing. I was raised on missionary stories. I wanted to go. I wanted to be in Africa. I wanted to see the world as a missionary, and I wanted to just partake of the world and also minister to the world. So when I didn't have that as my direction anymore, because I didn't think I could do that, because I didn't know what I believed, there was a real loss in that too. And, but I wanted to see the world, and I always felt that we're all created equal. And I was fortunate enough to find a job that let me travel around the world. And then I also started traveling myself. So I've been to about 70 countries, and I've seen so much, I've learned so much. Much of it was very surface. And, I didn't get to spend the time with the cultures that I would have liked, but what I learned is that we're all human, and we're all divine. So we bring light and we bring love to our life and to our loved ones. And so that's great. And what I was going to say, Jim, about when I first moved back from London, what I felt was that I'd been like a snake shedding my skin, going from one identity to another identity to another identity to another identity. And I thought, you know what, I am ready to be a tree and to grow some roots and some rings. And so the last 10 years, I'd say, have been about that, trying to really find my stable footing as an individual, as who I am. And there are so many facets to an individual's being. But that idea of beginning to trust that I can set down some roots in my life, in my beliefs, in my family, has been really important and meaningful and gratifying. And many of the people who are here today on this call as my support are a great testament to the community that I've been able to build over the last several years. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I love the nature of the question and the metaphor of the roots and the tree, because isn't it true that the work of being human is about both the intersections right? All those intersections of what it is we have experienced and who it is that we are and the identities that we have. And then the integration of all of that, right? So the tree becomes not just the roots and the trunk, but then all the extra stuff that's going on there. And you know, those more conservative contexts that want to have the answer. I'm going to sound like a Unitarian Universalist here, that want to have the answer, right? I'm going to tell you how to think and be and do, you know, struggle with intersections and integration. They want there to be just this very simple one way of thinking about it. And, you know, I think that's a grown-up way of being. I mean, we started talking about how we move from a childlike view. You know, we teach the kids that the light, you know, Jesus is the light of the world, and that's why we do the light. And we don't talk about all the other things yet, right? So moving from that childish or childlike understanding to a much more complicated and integrated and intersected perspective. Praise the Lord that we're wired that way to do that. Who else has something they want to ask or say? Have we covered it for the day, or are we just getting tired and hungry? Well, so it feels like maybe it's a wrap. Thank you so much to everyone for being here. We are, you know, stumbling and bumbling a little bit with virtual ARTChurch. It's a lot better when we're in the room with each other. But we're so honored to actually have, we've used some art that hasn't been in the room to discover, to reflect theologically and spiritually. But it's really an honor to use this very specific series. Julie, it's just been so great. Let's figure out a way to return your work to you when you want to get it back. And thank you everyone for sticking around for an extra 45 minutes to process. This has been such a beautiful experience. So thank you. Oh, is that?
Hi, hubby, Sanjay.
Hello, Sanjay. Oh, and then here.
Sorry. Come here. Come.
Oh yeah. So I want to see. We want to see the whole family.
This is my gang.
Yay.
My gang. They've been listening downstairs.
So good to meet you. Oh wait, I want to spotlight. Let me see that daughter.
Oh, she's hiding.
She's hiding. Oh, there's the pup. There's the daughter.
There she is.
Hi,
Hello.
everybody. So nice to meet you. Thank you for being a part of this today, and bless you. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
Thank you. It's
Thank
great
you.
to be here.
See you soon. Thanks, everybody. We're going to
Thank you,
release you to your lunch. God bless.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.